Okay, we want to explain removing a broken shaft, trying to extract it. And we would always try, if possible, to extract the shaft out of the club head before we would, as I say, simply give up and put it into a hosel boring fixture and a drill press, which at that point, if you were going to drill out a shaft, you would want to have that scenario or that situation to do that. It's the proper way to do that. But in this case, we're going to just try to extract it. I've got a broken steel shaft into an iron here. In this case, I'm going to use the aluminum jaws in the vise, or possibly the brass jaws. Either one of those would work well. And just clamp the club, toe down, and get it snug. And in this case, most of the golf clubs today, you should be able to do them with just what we call a simple easy out, broken screw extractor type, and that this will just simply thread in and go in counterclockwise and grab a hold of the shaft and pull it out once we've heated it. We may need, traditionally normally for irons, we use the number 5. If we were doing a metalwood with a steel shaft, we would use the number 4, okay? So I'm going to heat. I'm going to put my safety glasses on. I'm just going to heat until I can see the epoxy break loose at the top of the hosel. In this case, a little more is a little better than not enough. Install, easy out, thread it in. May even need a hammer. Now I've checked to make sure that any epoxy on the inside of the shaft has been drilled out. You may need to do that. Sometimes a little bit of persuasion there. And that's not quite grabbing, so let's go a little bit more heat. I think we got in there far enough. Yeah, I'm down there far enough. So a little more heat. And as these easy outs start to get worn a little bit, they may not grab quite as well. Got it. Actually got it. There we go. And just carefully thread that out in a counterclockwise fashion. At that point, again, take a brush, clean up the club head. Carefully, it's going to be warm. And clean up your club head again with a brush down the inside. And again, I like to use a drill bit at the bottom of the bore to make sure I get any epoxy out at the bottom of the bore as well, and get the club head ready to go back together again. Okay? Most of them today should come apart generally that easy. But you can run into something, for example, this Wilson Pro Staff here has a taper tip shaft. And taper tip shafts are driven in under a force fit, and this one could come apart a little bit more difficult. So if we kind of make an assumption here that maybe we've tried our easy out and we haven't gotten this one apart, well, we have these other extractors, and I've got 2 different sizes here. I'll check here which one I want to use for sure. But this is more of a tap with a sleeve that goes on it, and the way this works is we actually initially thread this into the shaft, and be very careful threading this in, because if it isn't bad enough that we have a broken shaft in here, having a broken tap inside of our broken shaft is even worse. Okay, now that's not wanting to thread in very well, being that older taper tip, so I'm going to take a smaller one. We have 2 sizes of this. This is actually one that would normally be for woods, and I'm going to thread this one in here. And again, very carefully, don't force it. You need to get it in there enough to be able to grab a hold of the shaft. And I think we're going to be good right there. And then I'm going to take this nut and tighten it down against the sleeve. And we'll take a wrench and tighten it, but now we can heat this. And again, we heat the hosel. Quite hot in this case. All else fails, apply a little more heat. And if this works correctly, the tap will hold the shaft, and when we tighten the nut, it'll put pressure against the sleeve and it'll pull the shaft up out of here. gonna probably heat a little bit more than not enough in this case. And then I'm gonna take my wrench. And tighten, and again, even here, don't force too much. Because again, we don't want to break this tap. And in that case, my tap wasn't in far enough, it came loose. Wrench fits a little bit too. So let's try this again. And we're going a little deeper than we were. I can always come back and put it in a little bit deeper. But if I try to force it too much to begin with, I just enhance the chance that I'll break this tap in there, and I just don't want to do that. Yeah, we'll heat it a little bit more again. Just being very careful again because it's getting a little tight. Might come back and heat a little bit more here. I think I will. And grab this and see if I pull this, because everything's turning at this point. It's not threading down any longer. Let's do it. Let's see what we got going on here. So we had our shaft. We haven't got it yet, but we got it coming out of there. But it got to the point where the shaft was turning. So possibly at this point, I can come in here and grab it. And it's going to split it a little bit. Grab it with an easy out and get it out. This is a good example. One that's not coming easy. Okay, what I've done, I still have my Wilson Pro Staff in here, and I still haven't gotten this tapered tip quite all the way out, but I went and cut off some of the top of this so that I can get a hold of this better again, and hopefully I'm going to be able to just do it with one of the easy outs. It is loose. We did have it loose and it was starting to come out. I may have to go back to the tap and thread it back in, but we're going to try just heating the hosel a little bit more, loosen this up. Another thing that's always an option when you have a broken shaft in a club like this, as long as you have some time ahead of time or make some time ahead of time, take this golf club and put it in the freezer. And I'll explain here in a minute. We shut that torch off, but if you put it in the freezer, the metal will contract, and then when you bring it out and heat it, the metal of the hosel will expand before or quicker than the metal of the shaft, and it will make taking these out a lot easier. Trying to see if I can get this one. May not be able to get it with this easy out yet. Let's go to the little bigger one. Let's go to the little bigger one here. See if it'll grab a little better. Put the number 5 in here this time. Because I did have the shaft loose, but it doesn't look like that's going to work. We just have something stubborn, and when we hit it with a hammer, a lot of times all we're doing is driving it back in again anyhow. I do still seem like it's loose a little bit. Give one more try. If I don't get it this way, then I'll have to go back to my tap and thread it back in and pull it back out the rest of the way that way. I was hoping since it was loose. No, that's just not going to grab that well enough, so we're going to have to go back to our tap. Okay, I tried to get it out with the easy out, and I couldn't get a hold of it well enough to get it out, so I've threaded my tap back in here one more time. Again, now the shaft is a little shorter because we got some of it extracted. We cut that off. I'm going to heat this a little bit more. Actually, as I threaded my tap in here, I could feel the shaft move a little bit, so hopefully we won't have much of a problem. And as I said before, plug repair will test your patience a little bit. And it's not always just an easy thing to assume that I'm going to take and drill this out of here either. So we're threading down. Yeah, we're threading pretty easily here, so hopefully we're pulling the rest of that out of there pretty easily. This is one of the more stubborn ones you're going to run into here, as we're finding out, but it is something that you can run into. And there's the rest of our shaft at that point up inside the sleeve. We've gotten it out of the head. We can go about cleaning this out again with a wire brush. It's going to be awfully warm. Be very careful with it. You might want to obviously quench it off in some water first. Take a brush, clean down the inside of the hosel. Definitely going to have to get some glue away to get all those heat marks, because we heated that one quite a bit. That was pretty stubborn. But that is something that you'll run into at times when you're extracting a steel shaft. Okay, we want to talk about some more broken shaft removal. In this case, we want to talk about broken graphite shafts and how we would go about working with those. In this case, I have an iron with a broken graphite shaft. And really the easiest way to go about with an iron to take out a broken shaft is just to drill it out. I'm going to heat the hosel first because that will make drilling a lot easier. Graphite as a material doesn't necessarily drill that easily. And even here I've laid out some drill bits of different sizes that will just basically start to enlarge the hole a little bit at a time and gradually walk it out. I probably won't have to go more than through 2 or 3 of these bits again because I can heat it. If I can heat it and soften it up, it will come apart a lot easier, and generally with an iron we can do that. I'm going to again clamp it into the aluminum jaws. In this case, I'm going to put my safety glasses on again. Take just a torch, because again, with an iron like this, I don't have any finish I'm worried about damaging, and I can just heat this up. Basically, again, I'll heat until I see it burning. See some of the epoxy start to burn. Kind of like that. And then I've got a small bit in the drill, and I'm just going to start to drill. And again, a lot of that will come out very easily because now I've heated it, I've just softened it up and pretty much take it all out. It's a little warm. just working that around because again, now I've got it so nice and soft, and basically I'm gonna get it all pretty much just doing it that way. But I'm gonna go ahead and change here just to a little bit larger bit. If I'm working with a 370 parallel tip hosel, the U size drill bit, the letter U size, which is actually 368, is very good for a final cleanup because it's not going to remove any material. This particular club is actually a little bit bigger hosel diameter than that, but we've got all that out. And again, we made it that easy simply because we were able to heat it up first without doing any damage, worrying about doing any damage to the club head, because again, once this cools down, we can come back with some Blue Away and wipe away those heat marks. So irons normally with graphite shafts are really quite simple to get out the broken shafts. To switch to metal woods, one of the things we have to be aware of with a metal wood, the newer metal woods have a stop at the bottom of the hosel. And what that stop is, metal woods have what's called a shoulder, and this is kind of a cutaway of a hosel on a metal wood. And there's a little stop in there, and then we put a plastic or sometimes rubber little piece in there. So when we glue the club together, epoxy won't go down inside the hosel. Back in the days when metal woods were foam filled, the foam came right up to the shoulder, and it kept the epoxy from going down into the head. If we had the stop out of the head and we look down the hosel, you'll see a silver ring around the outside diameter of the hosel. That's this shoulder. We also have to be careful if we do decide, for example, to drill the shaft out, and that's one of the options for taking a shaft out of a graphite shaft out of a metal wood, is to drill it out. We got to be careful that we don't push the stop into the head. We also have to be careful that we don't drill through the shoulder as well. Actually, I'm going to show a little different method here. I'm going to take a graphite shaft out of a metal wood in this case. I'm going to attempt to take it out in this case by extracting it with an easy out, as opposed to drilling it out, so that if I can do it that way, I won't do damage to the stop or damage to the shoulder. So I'm going to take a set of rubber vise pads. I'm going to clamp the club toe down. Not a bad idea to have a clean set of pads that you keep really just for doing this particular job. Also going to take a bit and make sure that I get in here far enough. I might have to drill in. Now, when I drill this, I want to stop. I don't want to go too deep here. Most hosel bore depths are in the range of about an inch and a quarter, inch and 3/8. I'm actually going to put a little mark on my drill bit here. You can even put a piece of tape on it that you can see, and I'm just going to carefully drill down in. I want to make sure that this hole is large enough for my easy out, and I'm going to use a number 4 easy out. It looks like it may be already, but I just want to make sure I'm getting deep enough, so I'm going to drill just a little bit here. And drill carefully down easily to the mark that I put there. So, okay, so that's not a problem. We don't have to worry about drilling any deeper. Now, I'm going to switch to a heat gun. Just as if I had a metal wood and I were extracting a shaft out of a metal wood and I had it in the puller and I heat it for a specific amount of time, I'm going to do the same thing here. I'm going to heat this for at least a minute, but knowing in this case that this was done with a high impact or high strength epoxy, I can probably heat for closer to a minute and a half before this is going to come out of here. And then I'm going to take this number 4 extractor and hopefully thread that in and pull this shaft out. As I say, if I'm having a good day, then I'll be able to pull that out of there. So I'm going to turn my heat gun on high. I'm going to watch my watch here. And I'm going to heat probably for at least, I think, a minute, probably at least a minute and 15 seconds, but probably I'm going to go a minute and a half because I know this is put together with a high strength or high impact epoxy, and that will generally take a little more heat. I've been using, when I know that's the case, I've been using a minute and a half's worth of heating, and that has worked quite well. Moving the heat up and down a little bit, staying back away from the hosel. In the case of this particular metal wood, the painted finish is a light color. It would show any kind of burn marks or scorch marks very quickly, faster, for example, than if it was a black finish or a darker finish. So I have to be even a little bit more cautious with the lighter colored finishes. There's a minute. And the key here, the success rate is going to depend on not getting this too hot to where you've actually started to break down the epoxy that holds the fibers together. If you break them down too much, then this is just, the shaft won't maintain enough structure to come out in one piece. It'll just come out, splinter its way out, and then you'll basically end up drilling it out anyhow. So it is very much kind of getting the heat just right. There's a minute and a half. And let's take the easy out. And I don't know that I've had success yet. If not, I can come back and heat a little bit, but it might have got it a little too soft on the inside and chewed it up inside a little bit. So we might have done not necessarily too much heating because the whole thing isn't coming loose, just kind of the inside. But we haven't given up yet either. Okay, so that's not quite coming. But the shaft didn't like falling apart, and I can still get a hold of it. So I'm gonna, it's been a minute since I stopped heating, so I'm gonna heat again for 30 seconds. Try it again. Try it again. Now if I get to where the inside is kind of coming apart, and that's what's happening here, and I'm not really getting a hold of it any longer. There it is. Nope, I got it right there. What I could do, and I may end up doing yet, is switching to the larger number 5, and it may possibly grab this just a little better because it is loose at this point. Not quite. The number 4 still wants to grab a little better. It's loose and the shaft is spinning. It's just a matter of getting a hold of it well enough to get it to come out of there. And if I get it far enough, maybe. Just barely wants to come out of there. Pliers here. Get these to work. Maybe. Right there. There's a pair of pliers. In this case, I just got a pair of needle nose and just kind of make that hang on to that extension a little better, into that extractor a little better, and then I can pull that out of there. And it seems like a little bit more work maybe compared to the way we drilled the iron out, but again, the iron doesn't have the stop in it that the metal wood does. So there we were able to extract, again, being patient, we were able to extract that in this case, and if we can do that, we're allowed any damage to this stop or the shoulder, make life a lot easier. Again, run a brush in there, but being careful not to push it down in there too hard. Now that you've went through all that to get the shaft out, now don't go in there with a brush and push it so hard that you push the stop into the head as well. Okay?